Okay, so we're midway through Affliction League. You've got a ton of money burning a hole in your pocket. You're looking for something big, something expensive, something awesome to spend your money on. You want to build that can be a nice all-arounder. You want to be able to kill bosses, do maps, delve, jump into Cortex, do Blight, pretty much do whatever you want. You want something unique, something different, something fun. And a lot of you guys have been asking, what have I been playing? What am I doing? You guys have seen the video with the Reap. You've seen some of the videos of me doing this, running all around, killing all these things, and you guys are intrigued. You guys want it and you want to know more. All right, let's talk about it then. Okay, cool. Let's do it. So this is the Fire Reap Inquisitor. I'm going to be showcasing this on a tier 17 map. The best way to do this, I've seen a lot of people do this recently, is to take these tier 17 maps. These are pretty juicy. These are pretty strong. They have a lot of things that the entire game would have in them, and they throw it all into one jam-packed map, and you pretty much can get a real good feel for how this build works. This map will have the Fear. This map will have 6 additional Proj. This map will have the Sirius Storms. This map will have mobs that are constantly resurrecting. This map will have Union of Souls, pretty much stating that this map means that every time I kill a mob, the mobs will get bigger and bigger and stronger and more health and more health. So you're gonna see right away just how intense this map can get. And it really does showcase just the power of the build. Now, we're not gonna bother with the Wildwood because it's a Valdo map. We can do a map with Wildwood after this. We'll talk about the build and then we'll do like a juicer map. We'll get some Wildwood and we'll showcase it. But you can see right away, we just pretty much just walk all around. We one tap all of the mobs. And the mobs themselves are starting to get bigger and bigger, and they go from being one tappable to just having a lot of health. Now, these skeletons are still pretty much one tappable. We're okay here. We're having a good time. Things are dying, and you know, things are going relatively smooth. We saw a couple of Sirius Storms. We're gonna go check those out in a second. But right now, all we're doing is we're trying to juice up the mobs so that I could show to you just how beefy and how tanky. What? Oh, there goes the ramp. And just how insane these mobs will eventually get. Now you see the map boss, he falls right over. The mobs are still relatively dying. And here is the really good test of the defenses of this build. Now we have the Sirius Storm. It's kind of chilling in the middle of this map. We have the Feared. We can just go stand inside of the Shaper Beam. Chayula is going to start beaming us all over the place. Our health is just going to keep regenerating. We can just like kind of sit here. We can hop inside the Storm. You know, no real fear. And, you know, overall, the only thing here that we're just going to have a really hard time with if we get hit by it is essentially just going to be the Atziri Flame Blast. Now, we can stand in pretty much, I was going to say pretty much everything, but you can see that you are still capable of dying. But overall, you are very tanky. You have a lot of health. You regenerate a lot of health. And as long as you don't just take massive hit into massive hit into massive hit before your health regenerates, you can see like I'm in the middle of that storm and you're pretty well off. You're pretty tanky. You don't have too much to worry about. You can hop into the Sirius Storm. You can chill around for a few seconds. You can have a cup of coffee and you can live your best life. And, you know, I'm not saying by any means that this build is immortal. I'm not saying by any means that this build is the be-all, end-all build. But I am saying that if you are looking for something that is a well-off, good, you know, build to do a lot of content, and you have a lot of money burning a hole in your pocket, this build could be for you. All right, now let's just kill the Feared really quick and just kind of get them out of here. Because, you know, they were just kind of like, you know, slowing us down, and you know, I didn't want to die to them again accidentally. So that was the Fear. They were dead in like a 1/10 of a second. You know, you press your focus, you do a bajillion damage, you drop your Val Reap, you do a bajillions of more damage, and you know, you just kind of do what you're doing. So that's pretty much the build. Now the rest of this Valdo map is a little bit of a pain. This is an okay map to do. The big problem with this map is, like I said, it has Union of Souls, so the mobs constantly keep resurrecting. We have to look for the rare. The rare is pretty much a little bit of a pain to find. Sometimes they run away from you. And then we'll finish this map. We'll talk about what's going on. I'll show you guys a map with 100% deli and just kind of blow that one up too. And overall, that's the build when it comes to bossing. Now, we can also, if you want, and you guys are adamant about it, we can do a little showcase in another video and showcase you guys Ubers. But pretty much this build can go into tier 17 Valdo maps, it can go into delve, it can go into everything, and pretty much just cut everything down that you're essentially worried about. Where is the last rare? This is why I don't like this map. It's the only bad part about this map. This map is great for everything else, but hunting down this last rare. We're gonna be sitting here for like 5 minutes. The video's gonna, oh, there it is. Nice. Didn't even see it. All right, let's get out of here. Ooh, ooh, nice. Let's see, do I actually have a boss? Whoops. If I have an Uber, I could show you guys an Uber. I don't actually know if I have an Uber. Where's my fragment tab? I do have a Maven. I do. Sirius, we know we can survive the storms. Sirius is also a huge pain in the butt. Let's try an Uber Maven really quick. Doing this live. Somebody's like, oh my God, he didn't have this prepared. He could have recorded this ahead of time. Shut up, we're doing it live. All right, Uber Maven. Do I have another boss? Can I do a different boss? Should we do Uber Sirius instead? I'll do Uber Sirius at the end of the video. All right, so at the end of the video, we'll cut to Uber Sirius and Uber Maven. It'll be easier that way. Yeah, we'll do that. So stay tuned to the end and we'll do more Ubers. It's also a great way to increase watch time. Okay, so we'll do these at the end of the video. But let's talk about the video. Let's talk about the build, or let's talk about the build. Let's talk about what's going on. Essentially, pretty much what we have here is we have our Fire Reap Chieftain. He deals damage by casting Reap. Reap is the blade swirling spell in front of you. The size of Reap is really cool. We can have all of the blades overlap. So if you position your Reaps correctly, you can actually deal shotgunning. I think the word is shotgunning. You can deal tons of damage by overlapping blades. This build has blown my mind on so many different levels. Constantly, every time that I'm playing something and I think I have something cool or something that I'm not going to be swapping off of, you guys in chat, both in YouTube and Discord and Twitch and just everywhere, constantly bring different builds and different everything to the table that just blow my mind and just make me want to try something completely different. Now, this build was originally brought to me by a gentleman by the name of 47. It's 47HK. Oh my God, he's gonna watch this video. He's gonna yell at me. 47HKX. I couldn't remember what the last letter was, and it was driving me nuts. And I'm sitting here stumbling over my words. So when you watch this, note I know who you are, but please. And he got the idea from a gentleman that he found on POE Ninja, and he wanted to make sure that this gentleman got, you know, a shout out because he found the build from him. He copied him. He played it. He brought it to me, and it was really good. Now, this gentleman's POB is going to be in the description down below. I'll pull 47's POB, put it in the description down below, and you guys will have my POB, which I'll pull from the description and put that also down below. So you guys can compare the different ways that it's built and pretty much how you guys want to do things. Now, note with Reap, Reap is really cool. You take advantage of all kinds of really interesting things, and we're going to just kind of look at everything and kind of step by step going over it. The weapon itself, I picked up my weapon base for 150 divs. I YOLO threw some Vivid Vultures at it to see what would happen, and we hit spell damage. The base originally on it had double damage crit multi, and a Vivid Vulture, 6 Vivid Vultures later, we hit spell damage. You do not need this base. If you have a ton of money and you want to mirror a base, you can come mirror this. This is a great weapon. If you have a ton of money burning a hole in your pocket and you want to buy a base and craft it yourself, I suggest looking for a wand or a scepter that has double damage on it. But overall, the craft itself is really easy. You just want a high tier of spell damage. You want all spell skill gems. You want physical skill gems, cast speed, and you're pretty much happy. If you need help crafting the scepter, you don't know how to craft the scepter, leave a comment down below. Or come by the Discord. We'll talk to you guys about the scepter and how to craft the scepter. It seems intimidating. It's not that bad. If you have big money to spend, get a scepter or a wand with double damage. If you don't, just get the baseline stats. You don't need 93% or 94% spell damage. The scepter itself and the character itself will work really well without having this big scepter. You can see I can go into these map and these Union of Soul mobs. They will still, you know, it's a little bit slower. Oh, whoops. It's a little bit slower, you know, but we can still kill these mobs relatively easily without having a ginormous scepter on, you know? Let's find another pack. So we'll kill this. Oops. That guy had no health. Let's just find one more pack. So this pack of mobs, you can see the damage right there is relatively quick. We take the scepter off. And you can see it's a little bit slower. It's not as fast, but you can still burn through these mobs relatively easily without this scepter. So don't freak out over the scepter. You know, as long as you get something and put something on with +2 to skills and something, you will be okay. So the scepter in it has our Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire, as we know, gives us an extra % of spell damage because we're using a spell. Reap is a spell. We just get more damage from having Righteous Fire on. We have Steel Skin, cast when damage taken, just so that we can clear some debuffs as a defensive layer. Our helmet's pretty interesting and pretty easy. We managed to pick up a fractured regen life base on a hubris circlet. The overall helmet itself, when you look up the base, if they exist, they're not too bad depending on what tier of regen that you're going for. Getting the helmet itself isn't the expensive part of the build. Crafting all the gear might become pseudo expensive. If we look at some of the more expensive bases for the helmet, you can get a 125 for 2 divs at the time of recording. Some helms are already done for 100 divs. It kind of like the problem with this build is like I could sit here and I can price out all of these pieces, but everything changes so drastically so fast that it's so hard to keep up with it. So it really comes down to where you also have a budget and where you also want to spend money. I wouldn't go into this build trying to half-ass it though. It might not work and it won't work as well. And I'll show you guys why when we get there on why you shouldn't really consider, you know, like half-assing it. The helmet itself, we get the fracture, we hit it with an essence, we get RMR on it. And then I personally put the trigger socketed spells. I was talking to 47 about this. I think the trigger socketed spells, well, you have focus is really good. The only time that you're ever really using the focus is on like the feared or big packs of mobs that you want to die. It's the same thing with the weapon. You only really press the focus when you have a big pack of mobs that you want to die. And our helmet has frost shield, LE weakness, flammability, and life tap support. Originally, the helmet, instead of the focus, had more resistance or int depending on what you needed. And the helmet pretty much just sat there to cast Arcanist Brand, and it was another button at a certain time, then you had to constantly recast it. I didn't want to think about pressing Arcanist Brand and then focus and other stuff, so we just combined all of the focus and all the big bursty damage into one button click. You press the button, everything happens, whatever you're targeting just completely dies. The helmet, after we made the suffixes, I just locked suffix reforged defense. I got really lucky and I hit double tier 1 on energy shield. You can Eldritch Currency craft this and try to make it. You don't need as much energy shield as I have, but if you manage to get good rolls of energy shield, you'll be okay. The big takeaway is you want to craft on physical damage taken from hits as fire. That's the really important part. Same thing with the Eater Implicit. You want to have physical damage taken from hits as fire. One of the big defensive layers in this build is converting all of the types of damage that we take to fire and mitigating all of that fire damage. It's the reason why when we look at our leadership's price says that we only care about the maximum fire resistance. So leadership's price to buy, normally in a regular league, if you were to buy a perfectly rolled leadership's price at 333, these get really expensive. But in our case, we only care about +3 maximum fire resistance because we're converting all of the damage that we take from element of cold, lightning, and fizz to just fire. So you can actually get leadership's price relatively cheap. Note, when you play this build and when you do leadership's price, one of the things that I have to mention about leadership's price that I hate, that I have since we're on the amulet, is your 2 lowest stats or your 2 highest stats, your 2 highest attributes have to match. So when you're building this build and you're putting it together and you're crafting all the gear, your strength and your int, they should be your highest, need to match. So that's why you're gonna notice when we go to other pieces of gear, like we have a really weird amount of int on here and a really weird amount of int on here and a really weird amount of, like, our mage blood's not blessed. So keep in mind when you're building this and you're putting this together, your points need to match and you need to have your 2 highest stats match. This amulet's really good. It gives you tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of damage. You really need it. You really want it to work. The other way that you can get around leadership's price is if you change the weapon to an oscillating scepter. I think it's oscillating. I think it's oscillating. Oh my God, is it oscillating? No, it's not oscillating. There's another scepter that I can't think of the name of it. There's a scepter that gives you elemental overload. Let's see if I can find it. Implicit elemental overload. Yeah, it's is it not elemental overload? What's the name of the scepter? It's gonna bug me. There's a scepter. Somebody's in the comment section right now yelling at me. There's a scepter that you can get that has the Scorch Brittle, it's gonna drive me nuts, and I'm not gonna cut. We're gonna look together. We're gonna figure this out together. There is a scepter. I know there's a scepter. There's one-handed weapon. What's it under? Scepter, items, alternating. Yes, that's it. You can get an alternating scepter, and you can craft an alternating scepter. Alternating scepter will give you secrets of suffering. That, yes. So if you really don't want leadership's price, you can get an alternating scepter and do it that way. The problem is, and when you do this, you personally need to figure out how you're making up the loss of +3 fire resistance. So note, if you don't like leadership's price and you want to big brain change the scepter, you have to figure out how you're making up for the loss of the +3 maximum fire resistance. So there are options, there are ways to do it. It is very difficult to do it, but there are things you can do if you want to like jump through some hoops and figure it out. Our shield, we're going to be using a Dawnbreaker, very important. You absolutely really 100% want to have 20% cold and lightning taken as fire. Like, you absolutely want to. One of the big things about this build is, like I said, we're converting all of the damage that we're taking from cold and lightning to fire. We're going to be pairing up our Dawnbreaker with things like Tempered by War, so we take 50% of cold and lightning as fire. So this is 50% here of cold and lightning is directed as fire. This is another 20, so that's 70%. And then, you know, we take a Sublime Vision for the remaining 30%. So we convert all of our cold, all of our lightning straight to fire. Our fire is already fire, and then we do our best that we can, the best that we can to get as much fizz taken as fire. Ideally, the best shield that you would get would be a 20-20-20, and that would be corrupted with fizz taken as fire, or fizz taken as whatever, so that you can convert it to fire. That would be the most ideal shield. Those shields are really hard to come by. They are way out of budget even for me. So I got a 20-20-19. I settled. I'm happy. Maybe in the future I will lock this shield, or maybe in the future I'll buy a 20-20-20 and start locking it and see if I can corrupt it for something nice. Our body armor, just to go exactly with the same theme, our body armor is a Cloak of Flames. We want to convert physical to fire. I only have a +1 Cloak of Flames because when I looked for a +3, these things were really, really, really expensive. This +1 Cloak of Flames is about 10 divs, 15 divs, depending on when you buy this, what you look at it. So that's just something to think about. You can get +3 for anything that will increase the damage of your Reap. So Reap has a bunch of really cool tags on it that we can't see because the gem is so damn long. But you can get, you know, +3 to duration gems, and that'll be really good for your Cloak of Flames. Now, our body armor has our Val Reap. We use Val Reap a lot. We use it when we focus. We press Val Reap, we target the mob, we press the focus, the mob blows up. We pair it with an Awakened Spell Echo, which mine's not even fully leveled yet. I didn't even know mine wasn't leveled yet. We have an Awakened Cascade. We have an Empower. Ideally, you'd have an Empower 5. I was able to do everything I needed, so I didn't buy an Empower 5. You have added fire damage support, and then you have increased critical damage. So this is our chest. This is how it works. And pretty much it's just the chest. The big takeaway from the chest is the physical damage taken as fire. You really want this, and you really want +1 level of socketed gems so that you can kick your Empower up to 5. Or if you have an Empower 5, it kicks it up to 6. And this gives you just overall tons and tons and tons of damage. You see that our Val Reap right now is level 29 from everything. We do indeed have a 21-20 Val Reap. I don't think these exist. Oh, they do exist. They do. Nice. Yeah, this is why I don't price check this build. This is just gonna get really expensive really quick, and people are gonna be like, you know, and I'm gonna be like, look, I'm sorry. My bad, bro. My bad. Okay. So the ring, Calandra's Touch, we use a Calandra's Touch so that we can mirror our Vermilion ring. There's a lot of people who brought up the fact that there are a bunch of rings with this fracture on it. This fracture is really important. It gives you 10% of physical damage as extra fire damage. Since we only deal fire damage, getting Fizz as extra chaos or Fizz as extra whatever, or Fizz as extra element doesn't really do too much because we only deal fire damage. So this ring combined with a Calandra's Touch ring gives us 20% of Fizz as extra fire, 24% critical strike multi, you know, doubled, so it's 48, and just a bunch of cast speed, a bunch of life, a bunch of resistances. So, you know, it's a really strong ring. If you get the ring without the Fizz as fire, you will lose a ton of damage. You will. There's just no way around it. You'll lose a ton of damage. If you get the ring without a Vermilion base, you'll lose a lot of life. Right now, we have 2,500 unreserved life. If I take this ring off, we have 2,100. This ring gives us a lot of life. The really important takeaway about the Vermilion ring and why we do it on Vermilion ring is we want to have enough life to have enough regeneration. You see one of the running themes on our gear is regenerate life per second. So we have a lot of regen and percent regen. Even our charms, when we get to the charms, you'll see too, a lot of the charms also have percent regen. Our life pool is a defensive layer, and our ability to regen our life is a defensive layer. So the more life we have, the more the percent life regen works, and the more the flat regen works to just give us more survivability. So you really want to make sure that if you can get the Vermilion base, you can. You'll probably have to fracture your own ring. That does get costly and does get pricey, but if you want to start and you want to just put the build together and get a budget base, I would say try to get an amethyst ring. An amethyst ring is a pretty good starting point, as chaos resistance is the only other resistance that we cap in this build. So if you can get a nice amethyst ring with this fracture, I would do that. Otherwise, I'm not really too sure what other bases would be pretty good, but that's just where I would start. Overall, the ring itself isn't too bad to craft. You see, I have tier 2 cast speed, tier 3 chaos resistance. I essentially just hit the ring with some essences until I hit cast speed. I lock suffixes, reforged chaos, check to see if I was chaos res capped. I was, and we were good to go. So if you have questions about the ring, how to craft the ring, please don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. We'll do our best to help you out. I mentioned we paired the ring with a Calandra's Touch, and that's that. Now the gloves, following the same thing, we buy a pair of fractured gloves with life regen on them. We get them on an armor ES base. If these exist, they aren't too bad. I don't know if these will exist. You don't need a 96 roll. You could probably get away with a 90. The higher the regenerate life per second, the better off you are. When I made these gloves, I hit them with essences for int until I hit life regeneration. I just explained to you why the life regeneration is really good. It is really important that you try to hit tier 1 life regeneration. Now, the int roll, as I mentioned earlier with leadership price, is going to matter, and you'll divine your gloves and your boots later to match the leaderships. Don't worry about them until you're pretty much there. As far as the rest of the gloves go, I use Eldritch Currency until I hit tier 1 life. I lock the gloves. I Ashlinked. I hope to hit socketed AoE gems or Fizz converted to fire. Either one of those two hits is really good. You craft on the one that you're missing. Ideally, though, you know, you just get everything, and everything's pretty good. As far as the Eldritch Implicits goes, inflict fire exposure on hit is really important, and unnerve for more spell damage is really good. I can actually probably kick up my unnerve chance to greater and get a higher percent chance to unnerve, but lesser is more than fine. All right, gloves have purity of fire. You really 100% need level 21 purity of fire. Without level 21 purity of fire, you won't be at the magical 90% fire resistance. So you have to get level 21 purity of fire. It is very important. You don't need the quality on the purity of fire. If you get the quality, it's extra, it's nice, but you don't need it. We are 83% fire resistance without the purity of fire. The purity of fire is about a divine. We use Herald of Ash to help our clear. We kill a mob, they die, they explode. The explosions help us. It gives us more spell fire damage. More Fizz is extra fire. You do need an Awaken and Lighten 4 to fit all of your skills in. Without the Awaken and Lighten 4, you will not be able to fit all of your auras in, as we only have 37 mana. So you pretty much do really need that. Petrified Blood, you know, just for survivability's sake. Our belt, Mage Blood. I mentioned this earlier, I'll mention it again. The strength roll on the Mage Blood, you'll use, what are they called? Blessed Orbs to re-roll around the Mage Blood, depending on how much strength and stuff you need later on. You'll figure that out as you start putting the build together. And the boots are the same thing. We got life regeneration on the boots. We got a fractured perfect percentage roll. I hit the boots with Essence of Envy for chaos resistance until I hit tier 1 int. When I hit the tier 1 int, and I had int on the boots, int on the gloves, and I leveled up my character a little bit, I started rolling the boots and the suffixes to match the gloves, and I did some math to figure out that. The boots, when I locked them and used Eldritch Currency, I hit it with a couple of Chaos Orbs. I ended up rolling tier 1 or tier 2 life, tier 1 hybrid life. I crafted on movement speed. I was done. You know, I was happy. Ideally, I'd go back and recraft these boots. I'd lock for Veiled Chaos Orbs or lock for Ashling after I had tier 1 life, and then I would Ashling for better percent movement speed. I don't care too much about the movement speed because we use Frostblink of Wintry Blast, and we can essentially just get around the map really quick. So I wasn't too worried about the movement speed. I was more worried about the 100% chance to avoid being chilled. Our boots, we add Fizz's extra fire for more damage, and action speed because action speed is amazing. Now our boots are going to have Frost Blink of Wintry Blast. That is how I'm able to do this blinking all over the place and navigate and move around my maps really quickly and really easily. I pair it with Spell Echo so that when I blink once, it blinks twice, and I can just cover really good distance. This is also paired with Arctic Armor because Arctic Armor is really strong. Arctic Armor prevents us from being frozen. Arctic Armor allows us to stand still, and Arctic Armor just pretty much just gives us everything that we want. We have less physical damage taken from hits while stationary. We get, you know, less physical damage taken. Yeah, less fire damage taken from hits while stationary and less physical damage taken hits from stationary. Since we cast Reap and Reap makes us stationary, we are stationary long enough to have advantage of Arctic Armor. Plus, it also like doesn't let us be frozen, I think. Right? Yes, I'm immunity to freeze, so that's why we don't have the freeze pantheon. And faster casting. Faster casting is literally just so that it can blink all around. You can change faster casting to whatever you want. You don't need faster casting. So that's that. Oh, the shield has Herald of Purity, Arrogance, and Tempest Shield. Tempest Shield for just the immunity to shock. Very important. Very, very important. Forgot to mention that. And that is the gear. Now for flasks, we use Bottled Faiths. We don't use a health flask, we use Bottled Faith. Same reason why we would press the focus button. We press focus, we Bottled Faith, and then we just kind of kill everything. We have a silver flask for cast speed with increased effect. We have a life regen flask from a diamond flask. We have so much life regen that we really don't need a health flask. You can just regen all your life. You have a ruby flask for fire resistance and critical strike chance. And then you have a quicksilver flask to avoid being stunned. So we're stun immune, we're shock immune, we're chill immune, we're ignite immune, or we have a billion fire resistance. So we pretty much cover all of our ailments. Yeah, we're immune to freeze, shock. We're immune to ignite. We have 100% chill avoidance. Now you'll note right away, I mentioned this earlier, I'll mention this again. Our fire resistance is indeed 90. This is because we are converting all damage taken to fire. We don't care about our cold resistance. We don't care about our lightning resistance. We only care about our fire resistance and our chaos resistance. Those are the two big important parts that you want to know and that you want to mention. Now we'll pull up the POB and we'll talk about the character and the POB. It's probably just easier to do it in here. Now we are Inquisitor. We're Inquisitor for a couple of reasons. One, we get a bunch of strength and int and critical strike chance per point of strength or int, whichever is lower. They're tied, so we just get flat. We get nearby enemies take 16% increased elemental damage. We take, or nearby enemies also deal less elemental damage, so that's good defenses. Our consecrated ground applies 15% increased damage taken to enemies. You have consecrated ground while you're stationary. We also get a large consecrated ground from Bottle of Faith. So as long as we're standing on top of something, which we can stand on top of something and tank it, we have just a ton of extra damage. And we have Pious Path so that our consecrated ground causes life regeneration and also recovers energy shield. And it just lasts longer. Overall, really, really, really good. Now, as far as the tree goes, we're going to start up here. We have a that which was taken. We only care about two important parts on the that which was taken: fire resistance and life regeneration rate. If you can get cannot take reflected elemental damage, you are golden. Those three stats together are really nice if you can get them. But if it doesn't exist, when I looked for it, I waited a couple of days for one like this to pop up. If you can get just max fire resistance and life regeneration rate, you are more than happy. We come over here to Pain Attunement for 30% more spell damage. We grab Melding for more life and ES, and you'll notice this one floating hanging int point. I have this floating hanging in point for two reasons. One, I'm eventually going to level and get this jewel socket. And two, this floating in point, if I were to remove it, because it's 10 int, would cause my intelligence to not match my strength. So it was really convenient, instead of redefining my gear, to take a point on the tree that led to a jewel socket. So that's what this hanging in point is for. I know there's a couple of people that come by the stream and they're like, hey, what the hell is that? What's going on there? Now, the rest of the build and the POB is pretty straightforward. We take AoE here. We take spell damage here. We're getting some resistances and, you know, elemental damage there. The standard Templar stuff. We come over here to our Sublime Vision. This Sublime Vision, when I bought it, was like 200 divines. I have looked at the price yesterday. I have looked at the price today. I don't know what's going on with this, but this is one of those items that if you don't have this, your defenses pretty much just tank. And like, you see that your max fire hits 1.1 million and your max cold and lightning hit is 2.2. You could start without it, yeah, for sure, but like you're gonna die to random stuff. You're not gonna be able to tank Sirius Storms. You're not gonna be able to take Shaper Elder Beams. There's a lot of things that you won't be able to tank as well as I did in this video. So without this jewel, you're gonna have a hard time. You can start without it. I wouldn't start without it, but you can start without it, but you're gonna die a lot more than I do. And you're just gonna die a lot more in general. You might not be able to do all the Valdo maps, but I mean, you can start and then save for it, but I don't know if I would play it, or you could just like gamble Sublime Visions. I wouldn't do that until you hopefully hit Purity of Fire. I still wouldn't do that. This thing is absurdly priced for God knows what reason. I have no idea. Maybe we just need to convince a bunch of people to go run Uber Shaper and get Sublime Visions onto the market. We take Iron Will for strength damage applies to spell damage, which is really good. We grab some extra life over here, which is really nice. Shaping's on the way. We get life regen, which is really good. I take an Unnatural Instinct with Corrupted Blood. These things are like, I don't even know how expensive these things are. These are like 65 divines with Corrupted Blood. I'm not even gonna price check this because there's gonna be some Jimmy that's gonna yell at me. The minute I price check this in front of you now, somebody in the comments is gonna lose their damn minds when they see that this thing is like a mirror. This was not a mirror when I bought it. So please don't yell at me. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Don't yell at me, Jimmy, please. I know it's expensive. I don't think it'll maintain this price point. There's too many of them on the market and none are selling. I don't think it'll maintain this price point. I'm pretty sure it'll come down. Fingers crossed. As far as a Watcher's Eyes go, I have a Watcher's Eye that gives me immunity to ignite with Purity of Fire. I think that's pretty good. The big takeaway from the Watcher's Eye is you want physical damage taken from hits while affected by Purity of Fire. That's like the big takeaway. You don't care about the cast speed, about Zealotry. We don't even use Zealotry. But if you can get a fizz taken from hits as Purity of Fire with immunity to ignite while Purity of Fire, you're chilling, bro. That is awesome. You are happy as can be. So these weren't too bad. These weren't too bad. You just redivine it yourself. So you buy the 55 divine one, and then it's like a 6 through 10 roll, and you just divine it yourself. Don't buy the 70 or 85 one. If you can get this 55 one or a cheaper one, just buy the cheapest one and divine it yourself because you don't care about the cast speed, right? So yeah. Outside of that, we have a large cluster jewel. This large cluster jewel gives me increased effect, cast and attack speed. Those are the two important parts. Ideally, my cluster jewel would be increased effect, attack, and cast speed. That is ideal with chaos resistance. Those three stats are cream of the crop. The fourth stat, I have increased damage because I was trying to annul exalt life. I annulled exalted increased damage, so I just left it. Ideally, you would have increased effect, attack and cast speed, chaos resistance, and life, but I ended up with this and I just left it alone. These clusters, done like this, I think they exist. I think you can get them done like this. The big takeaway is you want these two mods. Everything else is extra. So these two mods alone, you can get relatively easily. Yeah, these two mods alone, you get relatively easily. And if you increase chaos resistance, there's a couple. There's actually a couple that exist that aren't too bad. But if you go for the increased damage, it just doesn't exist. Yeah, if you get the increased damage, you're happy. But as long as you have these three mods, you're big chilling. You're big chilling. Big chilling. Our Timeless Jewel, mine was about 150 divines when I bought it. This one's really important. It has to be Rockiata. There's no way around it. You have to have a Timeless Jewel for Rockiata. Rockiata gives you Tempered by War. Like, you absolutely need Tempered by War. The big takeaway from the Timeless Jewel is it gives us a bunch of strength, which is really nice, which helps us match the int. It gives us double damage, which once again is really nice, gives us a ton more damage. It gives us physical damage taken from hits as fire. This is how we increase our physical damage taken from hits and convert a lot of it to fire. We have 2 fizz taken from hits as fire there. We have increased physical damage, which is ever, and we have a 3rd physical damage taken from hits as fire. If you can't get all 3 physical damage taken from hits as fire, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Ideally, you would like to get the strength and as many physical damage taken from hits as fire. Keep in mind when you're picking a Timeless Jewel, if you get one with more strength on it and all extra bells and whistles, you will have to match your int somewhere else. And I don't know how you're going to do that. It might be that you get this cluster jewel right here and you get a jewel with a bunch of int on it. So just keep that in mind. Oh, something important that I forgot to mention. We are Avatar of Fire. So that's something to keep in mind. We only deal fire damage. So I completely forgot to mention this, and I'm going to mention it now. Avatar of Fire says 50% of her physical, cold, and lightning damage converted to fire. Deal no non-fire damage. So we have 50% fizz converted to fire here. 30% from the gloves. Then we have, where is the gloves? Where are the gloves? The gloves, the gloves. 30% from the gloves. And then it's staring at me right in front of my face. Physical percent of converted damage to fire from the Fire Mastery. I knew I was dumb. I knew it existed. And that's where we get the 100% for the 40 here, 50 here is 90. And this is why when we ashling the gloves, it doesn't matter if we hit the +2 or the fizz converted to fire. Either way, it's really good. If you can get the 40% somewhere else, you can uncheck this and move this mastery around. It doesn't really matter. But yeah. I love making these build guide videos because it constantly teaching me so many things about the build that I kind of should already remember, but I don't remember, but then I end up remembering anyways. But yeah, overall, this is the tree. This is what you need. I showcased the charms a little bit briefly earlier, and we'll just like touch on them again. They're down over here. Our charms are pretty cool. We get max fire resistance, calling strike. The calling strike I think is actually really important. The max fire resistance is more important. I like calling strike a lot. It's good quality of life. You kill everything really quick. We get life regeneration here, and enemies are covered in ash. I think this one is really good and really important. I would try to get this one. And then movement speed cannot modified below base value. It's nice, but I really wish it was action speed. But it's nice. And then we have 18% life regeneration rate. So I don't know if you need the movement speed cannot go below base value. I think it's nice, but it's like, it's kind of like whatever. As long as you get 2 regens or one of them has covered in ash, you're pretty good. And then fire resistance, culling strike. So overall, that's that. Now the build itself is pretty tanky. We see that our max fist hit could be a lot higher. It's only 197. I'm sure if I like go in here and actually set up configurations, it'd be a little bit better. So like, see like our max fist hit now from an enemy is 969,000. All we did was change the guardian pinnacle bosses. We'll say the enemy's scorched, the enemy's brittle. We always get about 5% on the brittle. The enemy's shocked and sapped. We always have max sap. We always have, assuming it's not uber, we always have max scorch, which I'm just gonna say is like 30. I don't know what the heck the max scorch is. I would need to go look. We have our flask active. We're on consecrated grounds. The enemy is covered in ash. We're 1 second stationary. So yeah, it's pretty much it, right? Pretty simple configurations. You know, we press Bottle of Faith because we do that when we do that. And that's the only time that we care about doing things. And as far as our Reap goes, and we include it in our full DPS, as far as our Reap goes, we have 4 Reaps. You can see that in game. We have 4 Reaps, but essentially only 3, depending on where you stick your cursor, will overlap if you do it right. So you can see right there, we have 3 overlapping Reaps. So we're just going to assume that our our combined count is 3. Kick this up to 5. Kick this up to 4. Kick this up to 5. This should be 5 eventually. So assuming we've done calculations somewhat correctly, we have about 84-ish million DPS, I think. Oh, focused, 95. Life tap. We have onslaught. I think that's everything. You know, I don't even know. I just know everything dies. Then we have like 28 million Uber. Oh, we're always on low life too, right? I don't remember if we have endurance, power, or frenzy charges. I don't know. That's the best part about this. I don't even know. All I know is the DPS number me doesn't matter. Everything just dies, right? You just click, stuff dies. Scorch might actually be higher. Brittle might be higher. Sap might be higher. But overall, that's pretty much where the build is, where it sits, what it does. I'm pretty sure I'm doing the calculations wrong. I'm like almost positive, and somebody's gonna yell at me, or 47's gonna yell at me and be like, you're an idiot. This is what the DPS really is, and I'm pretty sure it's roughly in like the 200 something millions. And I'm just doing something wrong, and I don't know. Oh, we have maximum blood charges, which is 6. But if we leave this blank, it's maximum already. Okay, cool. We have arcane surge. I don't even know. Are we fortified? I don't even know. We have endurance charges and frenzy charges. I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know. All I know goes. It deals damage. It hits really hard. It does what I want it to do. Everything blows up. It's tanky. It's nice. The fear, you know, evaporates. But essentially, that's the build. That's how it works. I know I'm not the best at configuring POV, but I wanted to leave it as simple as possible because leaving it simple showcases what it does. And yeah, that's that. But for now, friends, I'm gonna go do one of these Uber Mavens or Uber Sirius. Uber Sirius? Do we do Uber Sirius? Uber Maven? We'll do Uber Maven. I'll do Uber Maven. I'll do an Uber Sirius. I'll show you guys phase 3 of Uber Sirius, and that'll be that. For now, friends, I hope you guys enjoy this, but I'll see you guys in the next one.
The prize piece comes to join.
Pain will be returned tenfold. Behold my creation.
I will have what I want. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry.
Resistance will be vanished. Time contorts. Scurry, scurry.
My irritation is growing. Stand still. You have said no.
Stop resisting. Reality bends. Punishment inescapable.
Scurry, scurry. Stand still. Oh, for aid.
If you really think this would work, destroying you is as easy as flicking a pest. How boring and small. You want the Atlas? Take it. It's yours. But Orion, I will burn to the ground. Perhaps the suffering of my fellow citizens will finally stir.
Fury of the cosmos. Obliteration.
What's this? A real challenge. You finally caught my attention.
What? Guilty. Crumble. utterly annihilate